Hi, my name's Cathy. Welcome to the Lunabird Book Club. This video is going to be a video diary of me working my way through The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I guess I should say what's kind of led me to picking up this book. So in case you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Cathy. I run this YouTube channel with Rachel, and we started it because we love books and reading, and a lot of our friendship revolves around storytelling, and we love talking about books, and we thought this would be a really fun thing to do, and it is a really fun thing to do. And outside of this channel, we're both kind of creative in lots of other ways too. For me, I love writing. I studied English literature and creative writing at university and then got a master's in publishing. I've had a few short stories published and I'm writing other projects too, on and off. I work in events, which is quite a creative industry, and I also love language and I love words, and I also use words a lot in serving in my church through either writing sermons or putting on kids groups or planning events. So writing and words, really important to me. But I'd say recently in the last 6 months, I don't know, I feel like I've hit a little bit of a wall with writing. It just seems to fall into the bottom of the to-do list. I was partway through a project and kind of fell out of love with it and didn't really know where to go with it next. It just feels like my creative life has kind of taken a step back. And then a couple of things recently have just kind of whetted my appetite to get back into it again. One was that I met up with a bunch of my university friends. We call it book club, but it's not really book club, it's just me to go with a bunch of university friends who were all also really good writers and creative people, and we're all doing different things now, and being with them again and hearing about their projects and what's going on in their life and what they're doing has given me a hunger to kind of get back into my creativity. A week after meeting up with them, we went to a dedication of a family friend's baby, and that was lovely. But at that dedication was another friend who Rob and I have not seen for about 10 years. Really lovely guy. He was there with his daughters. Unfortunately, his wife couldn't make it that day, but you know when you just see somebody who you haven't seen for a long time and you just pick up your friendship as if nothing has happened. A really good soul, and he's also works in a creative industry in video making, and we'll talk about this and that, and he recommended this book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who is a writer and a creative writer teacher, and apparently this book was huge in like the 90s, I believe, and sparked a wave of people unleashing their creativity. So it's called The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. And it seems the main premise of this book is that it was adapted from creative workshops that she taught, and so this is a way of going through creative workshops yourself. And the idea is that no matter what sphere your creativity is in, whether, you know, dancing, art, music, writing, photography, this is a journey to become more creative and to embrace your creativity and perhaps get over what they call blockages in creativity, but it's kind of got a spiritual element to it as well. And maybe if it hadn't been recommended by my friend who is also, I'm a Christian, I may have been a bit dubious of something that sounds a bit new age, which isn't something I would be drawn to or feel particularly comfortable with. But really the main argument she's making is that behind the universe there is a creator who in turn has created us to be creative beings, and the key to us being more creative and experiencing that is to be more connected to our creator. And whilst that philosophy might apply to other worldviews, that is definitely compatible with my Christian faith, so I do feel comfortable going into this. And I believe that this workbook will take me through 10 to 12 weeks of exercises and thoughts and activities, and hopefully emerge kind of more creative and with some routines and practices and skills that I can apply to connect more with my creativity and hopefully be more fruitful, productive and fulfilled in that area of my life. That's the promise of the book, and I'm gonna give it a go. So, and of course, you know when like you don't do things by half when you do these things. When I was looking to buy the book and check it out, it actually came there was actually an offer to get 3 books in one purchase. So I've got The Artist's Way. I've also bought the book that follows it, The Listening Path, and The Artist's Way workbook. So I'm going to put The Listening Path aside for now, and if I get on well with the others, you know, I can move on to that. But I thought it'd be handy to have the workbook that goes with this book, so any of the questions, I can make notes in this and I can follow it along and see how we get on. So far I have read the introduction in this all ready for week 1. The 2 main things that it's telling you that will be part of this process is, 1, every morning you have to get up and write what are called morning pages, which is 3 pages of freestyle writing, where you just write exactly what pops into your head, no matter what it is, whether it's mundane, inspired, nonsensical, moany, whatever it is, get it on the paper. And it's kind of a way of just draining out all the random thoughts that kind of get in the way when you're trying to be creative, is what I understand it to be. And then the second concept, which I don't fully understand, or maybe I haven't spent as much time thinking about, is that every week you take yourself on an artist date, where it recommends for 2 hours each week, you go out and do something that on your own, completely on your own, but you do something to go and like experience the world with your senses, do something fun, do something playful, and go out and get experiences. Both of those things sound quite interesting. Also sounds quite challenging for Rob and I to both timetable that into our lives with everything else we've got going on, but we'll see how we get on. So my next step is going to be that I want to finish reading the introduction in this workbook. So far the introductions have been very similar. I'm very thorough, so I would like to read both introductions before I dive into week 1. And then maybe I will start week 1 properly on this Sunday. I have finished 2 weeks going through The Artist's Way. The first week was whilst we were away on Whitby, and the second week has been whilst we've been back home. So I thought I'd film a little update of how those first 2 weeks have gone. So really, there are 3 things that this book has kind of been encouraging me to do. Oh, 4. Let's say 4. There are 4 things that this book has been encouraging me to do. The first is writing morning pages, where for the first half hour of your day you write 3 pages longhand in a notebook of just whatever comes into your head. And the idea is that it's a way of brain dumping, getting rid of all the extra thoughts that are going on in there, clearing your mind for the day to come. It's also a way of self-reflection and probing the things that are bothering you, or the things that are interesting you, or just having a chance to kind of reflect and consider. And sometimes a bit of like a cathartic exercise to deal with whatever emotions you're dealing with. So I have been doing the morning pages pretty faithfully for the last couple of weeks. I think I've missed maybe 1 or 2 days, and some days I've had to do them like an hour into my morning instead of first thing because of responsibilities with cats and children and all of that. I think I have mixed feelings about how that is working for me. On some level, I quite enjoy doing it. It's not a difficult thing for me to do, but I am somebody who journals a lot anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm feeling a particular benefit from doing the morning pages in this way compared to how I usually journal. I do like that The Artist's Way encourages you to like allow this journaling to like turn into prayer, then back into journaling, and you kind of invite God, or the creative force as the book describes him. You know, you can invite God to speak with you and influence you as you're writing, and you can talk to him, and you can encourage him to talk, and you can, ask him to reveal things to you. That's quite nice, but again, that is kind of like how I journal anyway. Often my entries turn into prayers, and my prayers turn into journal entries, and I'm kind of okay with that fluidity. I think sometimes I'm struggling a bit because my mornings are already quite full, and the book says just get up 20 minutes earlier, but I'm already getting up 20 minutes earlier than what I would like to fit in other things in my life. And really, one thing I would love to be able to do again is get up and do a run in the morning before work, and I just can't fit it all in before work. Something has to go. So at the moment, week 2, morning pages is something that I'm gonna continue with, but when I'm finished, I'm gonna assess whether or not I want to continue doing them. So that's one element. The second element is to do a weekly artist date. So the idea is that creative people need a well of experience, and you draw on that well to create art in whatever medium. But you can only keep doing that if you are having meaningful experiences. And one of the way an artist can make sure that they are having meaningful experiences is they're going out and doing things that are fun, doing things that are sensory, and importantly, doing things where they're on their own. Because if you take a friend or a partner or a child with you, you are not fully engaging in that experience. You are also monitoring and accommodating their experience and looking after them. So that's quite a challenge for me to commit to doing something fun for myself alone about 2 hours a week. But I'm going to try and do it for the duration of this course. So in week 1, whilst we were on holiday in Whitby, I went to Whitby Museum by myself. So we went as a family one day. That was really good fun. And then the next day I said, I'm going to go back, because the tickets we got last for the year. So I went back the following day and I had a really long, leisurely look at all the exhibitions, reading all the cards, and just letting my attention wander onto the things I was interested in and looking at them for as long as I wanted. And I really, really enjoyed that. I feel like I learned a lot, and I came back and I wrote down a long list of all the things that leapt out to me in that museum, and interesting things and things I'd love to learn a bit more about, and things to perhaps research in the future. So I felt that was a really good mind sharpening activity to do, and I really enjoyed it. And then this week, in fact just yesterday, I took myself off to a coffee shop and did about an hour's of sitting, having a sweet treat and a drink, and doing some people watching. And again, I had my notebook with me, and I really enjoyed doing this. So my process was, I would look out the window, try and spot somebody who was walking past, and try and get as much information about them as I can from looking at them. You know, what they're wearing, what their fashion was, who were they with, how were they interacting, how were they walking, you know, what expression did they have on their face, and just write it down as quickly as I could. And once they were out of sight, I would do the same again with the following person who happened to walk by. It is a bit weird. When I explained to Ola what I was doing, she said, "So you're stalking people?" I was like, a little bit. I'm observing people as they're walking by a street, and just trying to really see them. And that was an interesting activity to do, because within 20 minutes I was just kind of blown away of like the reality of all these different people existing, and all of them would have a depth. Like I could only see like what they were wearing, how they were walking, what kind of expression was on their face, and who they were with. But beyond all that, they've had this whole history behind them, and this whole internal life that I cannot see or possibly know, and all these memories and all these experiences, and just how rich every individual person is. And how small a fragment of that do we see as they're walking by, and just how wonderful kind of humanity is and interesting. So I found that quite an uplifting experience, even though I was just watching people walk by a street on a rainy Saturday afternoon. That was really enjoyable, and I filled about 10 pages of my notebook doing that within an hour, and that was really enjoyable. So I'm gonna, again, continue with my artist dates. I don't know what I'm gonna do next week. The third thing that this process encourages you to do is, as part of your morning pages, is to complete them by writing affirmations, and to repeat affirmations internally to yourself about being an artist. Let me see if I can find some examples of them. I am allowed to nurture my artist. I am a channel for God's creativity, and my work comes to good. My dreams come from God, and God has the power to accomplish them. As I create and listen, I will be led. My creativity always leads me to truth and love. I am willing to create. I am willing to be of service through my creativity. I am willing to use my creative talents. You can also have ones of, I have a real talent. I am a good writer. Like they had some that they suggested to you, and some that you could create for yourself of what you needed to affirm in your life. And the idea is, like I said, you're meant to write them at the end of your morning pages, and you're meant to, as you're writing them, your brain will give you reasons as to why the affirmation is not true. So if you say, I am a good writer, your brain might say, well, you're not a writer at all, really, and you're definitely not good. And you're meant to also write those down and then kind of challenge them and go, well, where's that idea coming from? And try and kind of take ownership of your thinking. I keep forgetting to do them completely. It's like I finish my morning pages, I'm like, yes, job's done, and I'm out of the house, and I keep forgetting to do them. So every now and again when I remember, I try and write one or two of them out a couple of times. I feel quite neutral about that. That's not hitting home for me yet, but it's not something very painful. Like I say, I keep forgetting to do it, so maybe as I do it more, it will have more of an impact. At the moment, not so much. And then the fourth thing that this process gets you to do is that there are several like reflective exercises where the book asks you questions and you answer them, or it might set you a task like list 20 activities you really enjoyed doing. When was the last time you did them? For the first 2 weeks, there was about 8 of those, and I did about 4 or 5 of them, which the book says like you don't have to do them all, but try and do a handful of them, particularly those that make you go, I don't want to do that. So I've done a bit of that too, and that's been okay. Nothing earth-shattering revelation-wise for me yet, but so far so good. I need to read chapter 3 this afternoon, ready for the week ahead. Weird things happened this week on my Artist's Way journey. So chapter 3 included a part about accepting that as you seek to develop your creativity and as you pray for it and look out for it, coincidences will happen and opportunities will come your way, and you have to be ready to seize them. And I read that and I was like, okay, I kind of get that principle. And then I was returning some books to the library this week, and they were advertising in the library 2 things. One was to submit to our local town's zine, all themed around nature, and they wanted entries of either short story or nature writing or poetry, 350 words. So I thought, you know what, I haven't submitted anything in ages, so I will do that. So I have, and I think I've been accepted because I've had an email back from them saying, would it be okay to publish this next to your full name? So that's quite nice and encouraging. And then the second thing was, in the library, they were advertising a creative writing workshop at Gawthorpe Hall, which is on today, and this is Saturday, the 21st of June. So honestly, when I saw this advert, it was only like 4 or 5 days ago. And yeah, we were going to get a tour of the house, explaining its history, and then a time to do some creative writing and with some refreshments and stuff. I don't really know much more of what to expect, but I thought, well, come on, I'm seeking to connect again to my writing and get more involved in that, and it would be nice to have some local creative writing connections. I've got some from uni, I've got a couple online, but I don't really have much of a creative writing community physically nearby, so maybe this is a chance to make some writer friends. I don't know. I really don't know, but I felt like after just reading that chapter about being ready to seize opportunities and then seeing an advertisement for a creative writing workshop, I should just follow it. So I'm going this afternoon to Gawthorpe Hall to attend a creative writing workshop, and I have written a piece and submitted it and had it accepted for like a local nature themed zine. So 2 positive things on my writing journey this week that I am happily going to accept, and I'll let you know how the workshop goes. Ooh, okay, so that reading workshop at Gawthorpe Hall was actually quite a lot of fun. There were about 12 people in the workshop. We first of all gathered downstairs in the hall's kitchen. We met Maureen, who was leading us through the workshop. She gave us a tour of the house, which took about an hour. And it could have taken a lot longer, but they kept it to an hour, so that the second hour of the workshop would be a little bit of time to come together and write. And the idea was, when we were going around the house, in every room we were to go in, we were to look around, ask questions of the guides that were around, and try and find objects or things in the room that particularly leapt out to us and find out a little more about them. And then in the writing part of the workshop, we took that inspiration and began writing, whether that was poetry or fiction, whatever came to us. There wasn't a time for like sharing or feeding back in that, but there was about 40 minutes dedicated to just purely writing, like sitting down with our notebooks and writing. And even though it's been a while since I've done that in a classroom setting, that felt quite good as well. It's a little bit intimidating, but just nice to have that time and space to write immediately after seeing all these fantastic objects. And Gawthorpe Hall is a particularly inspiring place to go around. The rooms are just so full of stuff, and the guides are really well informed, and they could tell you a lot about what was in the room and why it was there. So yeah, I am really glad I did that. It was a little bit scary to just jump on and do it, but I'm really glad I did it. And this has all brought me to now week 4 of The Artist's Way, and this week, man, I feel like the author is coming for me. So the idea behind week 4, it's about reclaiming your integrity and really getting to know your own personal voice and thoughts on things. So it's about really recognizing what you really think rather than what you think you're supposed to think and feel. And because obviously knowing your own voice and knowing your own thoughts is a huge part of being able to create your own art, because art's meant to have something authentic about it. So that all makes sense, but the challenge of this week is to have reading deprivation, which means basically for 1 week not to read, apart from obviously reading the book. And that is painful. So again, and of course, when I read that opening line, my reaction was, no way, I don't want to give up reading. I love reading, I need reading. And then the book explains the idea is that creative people, we often turn to reading at every opportunity, to the point where our own thoughts don't get time to develop on their own, because we're filling our mind with other people's words constantly. And that might not be true for you, but it is definitely true for me. I am always turning to reading just to fill any moment of the day, and that includes audiobooks too. So I love reading at lunchtime, I like reading in the evening, I listen to audiobooks when I'm driving or when I'm doing housework, and in any little tiny pauses of the day, if I'm not reading a book, I am reading social media. So the idea is that this week I don't do that. So here's how I'm feeling like I might tackle this one, because I know I do what this book is saying. I do jump to reading a lot to fill the void so that my mind is constantly entertained. That's what I'm really seeking. I'm seeking not to be bored. I'm seeking to be entertained at every opportunity. Do I need that, or is it okay for me to just experience boredom or experience the queue and let myself be more actively present in the moments of my life? That could actually be a thing I benefit from. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to read social media this week at all. I'm not going to read during the day. I'm not going to listen to my audiobook, even though I think it's really, really good. It does say I can listen to music, so I can listen to music in the car, but not reading. I am going to still read my Bible chapters because that takes priority. And I do think, maybe I'm twisting this a little bit, but I think I should be allowed to read my book in the last hour of the day to help me go to sleep. Because one of the effects of obviously not reading is you're given more time to think and reflect and meditate, and most of the time that's really, really good. But I already struggle to switch my brain off at night. And so actually I quite purposefully do want to not think deeply just before I go to bed. So I think that last hour of the day I will allow myself to read my fiction book to help me sleep. But for the rest of the day I will not be reading. And if that is a bit of a cop-out, I think I can live with that, because I already keep myself up into the night worrying and self-examining myself when I really just need to be going to sleep. So I don't really want to do that at that hour. I'm okay doing that during the day to let those thoughts come, but I don't want to do it the hour before I go to sleep, because then I don't sleep and I need my sleep. Artist update. Filming in public, so quite a strong chance of this being mortifying. So I'm hoping nobody comes on this path. But I'm out on an artist date right now, and I thought I'd give you an update. So I am just beginning week 6, and week 4, the reading deprivation was a challenge, definitely. And I did discover that although there are many good reasons to read, like building empathy, entering into a new world, experiencing creativity, I do use reading either on social media, audiobooks, or reading physical books. I do use it to separate myself from reality from time to time. And I do use that to avoid, because reading is a really great way to leap out of your own narrative into something much more exciting or interesting than what's going on around you. So I did find by cutting myself off from reading for a week, I had no choice but to deliberately experience the things I was experiencing. And actually, that felt kind of good. It felt okay to allow myself, like, yes, I'm washing the dishes, and I'm just washing the dishes to wash the dishes, and I can experience this and be in my own mind and in my own thoughts, and it's not so bad. And I did actually like that I gave myself time to think and experience and feel by not jumping out of my own mind so often to go read something. So I think that's done me good, and I would like to read less as a form of escapism and read more intentionally, and to more intentionally experience my own life and sit with my own thoughts with more contentment. So that was overall a positive experience, although it was a challenge. I didn't stick to it as thoroughly as I could have done, but I did stick to it quite a lot and feel like I benefited from it. And then week 5 was about not self-sabotaging by doing stuff that appears virtuous, like trying not to be selfish, but actually it's just cutting off your own desires. I feel like this chapter kind of re-emphasized things that have been talked about in earlier chapters, so it wasn't as hard-hitting for me, and I did miss my artist date that week. I think I did the week before, so I've not been very good with the artist dates. So now I'm on week 6, which is about money. Very interesting topic. So I've been reading about attitudes to money and kind of answering exercises to examine my own attitude to money, which is interesting. The main emphasis of this chapter seems to be recognizing that actually there's an abundance out there, and you can experience it and you can look for it, and it's a little bit name it and claim it, but it hasn't gone quite as far as that. But just to recognize that God's not stingy, that there's opportunities out there. Interesting thoughts. And so the activities and the exercises this week, there are a lot of like practical ones. So one was to go find 5 beautiful rocks and just discover that there's lots of beauty even in just looking at rocks. Pick 5 flowers and maybe press some, which I want to do anyway for my summer reading challenge. And what else was there? Throw away 5 pieces of clothing that are no longer serving you. Then there was some like reflective exercises about money. So I've come out today for a walk by the river to go to the riverbed and find 5 interesting rocks. But when I got to the good rock spot in the river, there were some youths there. Some male youths skimming stones, not doing anything wrong, but I didn't want to go looking for pretty rocks. You know, as a woman in her mid-30s, I didn't want to go do that next to a bunch of teenage boys who were skimming stones. So I've just turned this into a walk and an artist date. So I've got to the end of week 6 and I'm halfway through the Artist Way programme. So I'm going to close the vlog here and do a part 2 because I feel like this is going to be way too long a video. So far, the biggest takeaways I've got from this process is 1, my faith and my creativity are part of the same thing. Maybe sometimes I felt like my creative pursuits were a chill out thing I do, and the faith things I do are the important stuff that I do. And now I'm beginning to see how my creativity can be important and faith-informed and yet still be part of my rest and play. I don't know if that all makes sense, but it's beginning to make sense to me. And the second thing I'm taking away is how important it is to be connected to my own voice, thoughts and opinions without self-censoring to appease other imaginary people in my head. And how I need to give myself more room to express how I really feel, especially when I'm trying to create things. I would say perhaps the thing I'm surprised about is that so far there's been no instructions of actually engaging with making stuff or being creative. I kind of thought this would like set me up with a schedule to like write so many words a day or to do this or do that. There's been nothing, no instructions so far onto like, now go and do your creative thing. Maybe that's coming in the second half, but it's interesting that there's been 0 instructions about that. But I have been engaging more with my creativity in other avenues, which I hadn't expected. I thought this was all going to be about my writing, but it has impacted how I've been approaching some things for my church. So I've preached a couple of times since starting this process, and I've done some things a bit more creatively in how I preach than how I would do before. Like, for example, I had to preach a sermon on being forgiving like Jesus is forgiving, and I put together all the scriptures of when Jesus does something that is explicitly forgiving, and I put them all together as like a little narrative, one scripture after another, and then I found classic works of art depicting those scenes. And when I preached, I read them out, and I got my dad to read out all the words of Jesus, and we kind of almost performed it as like a dramatic reading with the worship team playing in the background. And I really enjoyed putting that together, and I felt it was a really effective way of showing Jesus teaching an example on forgiving without it being a straight sermon and still being very based in scripture. So I enjoyed that, and I feel like these exercises and this process has helped me connect with being creative in ways I wasn't expecting. So my halfway point would be, I'm connecting to myself and my faith and my creativity in general, but I do still hope that the second half of this will perhaps be a bit more directed into my writing. We'll see. So come back for part 2, and thank you for watching so far. Bye!